of the conversation?
Sure. So I would say that what we'd like to get from you is some clarification on some of the program elements. We would like to get your feedback on some of our initial ideas. And we're presenting ideas both in the realm of the building elements and how they might go together, as well as separate ideas about how one can get up to that second level, given the fact that we have to raise certain elements up to the 2 feet above the FEMA flood elevation. So, and then we want to take all of that back with us, do some more schematic design work, and then we would come back in a few weeks and present more, formal plans. And I don't know, how often do you all meet?
We're meeting, our typical cadence has been every other week, so twice a month, or more importantly, every other week. One of those meetings tends to, we engineered it to coincide with Parks and Rec, so that gives us an opportunity also to provide some kind of direct feedback to Parks and Rec.
So maybe 2 weeks from tonight would be
I think
the
that'd be
next
fantastic.
meeting? Or?
That'd be great. Yeah, and maybe the only other point I'd like to make, and just at the outset here, is that, as I mentioned earlier a moment ago, we did have Neo and team and a representative from Western Sampson at the last Parks and Recs meeting. And there'll be points along the way where, maybe some of the questions that you'll pose to this committee we'll have to take back to the commission and get clarification from the commission. So
Sure.
there may be program-related items or use-related items, so just to kind of put that out there. So, please.
Okay, so we've given you all a little in FY11 handout of what the slideshow is going to be. But so, as I said, we started by really just kind of taking a look at both beaches as they are now and comparing and contrasting. So in this first slide, you'll see Weed Beach on the left and Pear Tree on the right. One of the immediate takeaways is that that Weed seems to have a lot less asphalt and a lot more beach, sandy beach, and also more ancillary functions, tennis courts, handball courts, paddle courts, and that sort of thing. It's a larger land area. And it really does have a different feel, a different vibe than Pear Tree does. So going to the next slide, we actually spent some time comparing what's at Weed now versus what's at Pear Tree now. And without going down all of the items, you've got them in your handout so you can compare and contrast. One of the reasons we did this is we were trying to determine, for instance, with restrooms, men's and women's restrooms, how many toilets are there at Weed Beach? Do they function well? Is that sufficient? How many are at Pear Tree now? Do we need to increase that? Or are they sufficient? But one of the things that really surprised us, if you go to the very first line, you'll see that Weed Beach has almost 3 times as much sandy beach as Pear Tree. We actually did kind of a quick takeoff from the Google Maps image that we showed you on the slide before, and that's pretty amazing that there's really that much more beach area. And then the other thing that really jumped out on us, when you go down to parking about a third of the way down, Weed Beach has 135 spaces marked spaces, not counting the overflow. And Pear Tree has 220. So they're at Pear Tree right now, you're providing 85 more spaces than at Weed Beach. And yet one could argue that Weed Beach is a larger beach with more functions, more amenities. So that made us wonder whether we had more parking than we needed, and could we perhaps decrease the parking slightly as we're going through site planning and trying to accomplish some of the coastal restoration work and that sort of thing. The other thing that this slide really helped us with was if you go down and you look at square footages, for instance, you'll see that the guard shack at Weed Beach is almost twice as large as what you have at Pear Tree now. No, that, you tell us, maybe we have too much at Weed Beach, I don't know, but those are the kinds of things that we'd like to sort of get our hands around. First aid room is about the same size. The kitchen in the concession at Weed Beach is 450 square feet. So it's about 50% larger than the current concession kitchen at Pear Tree Point. And at Weed Beach, we also have an interior customer pickup area, whereas at Pear Tree, you come up to an outside window, so you really don't need to provide that space. And so that's something to think about as well, is do we want to have an interior pickup area for times when the weather might not be so good? Or is it fine to continue having people just come up to an exterior window?
Excuse me, Neil, would you like to have comments now, or should we do the same later?
Sure. I think, you know, the way I'd like to really approach this, I hope we can get through all the slides, but on the other hand, I'd like this to be very conversational, because we want to hear from you all about your thoughts on things.
Two quick points to make. Pear Tree has a boat ramp, which means we need parking for a pickup truck with empty trailers, to some degree. You know, and it's a little hard to figure out how much of that we need. Not as much as you might think, but more than if you hadn't thought about it.
We have thought about it, and let me just interrupt for a
Go
second.
ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah.
We were looking at the aerial view and trying to figure out where the trailers would come, and I'll bet that in the spring and in the fall there are days when a nice Saturday you might get tons of boat trailers coming in and out. Do you get many trailers coming in and out between those dates? Or once someone puts a boat in the water, is it in the water all summer?
Yes. You know, May, hopefully at some particular point the weather will turn nice.
Yeah.
And you'll see a ton of trailers coming in that are either property, you know, owned by the boat owners or the marine contractors who are putting them in or whatever. And then they need to park the trailers for a small period of time, mostly during the week, while they enter the boat and put it where it belongs. On the weekends during the summer, you get some boats, not as many as you would think, because of the hassle of the boat ramp. And that would probably change, hopefully will change when the boat ramp is fixed. Right now you can't launch your boat except, you know, between the two tides. But it's not like we get 50 boats
Right.
during the
Can you
season.
put a number on that to assist them though? I mean, would you say 6 would be?
I can't right now, Martha, because if it gets fixed, I think a lot more people will use it. But if I had to guess, I don't think more than 20 will use it.
So to be clear, that would be somebody who was bringing a boat on a trailer, launching it for the day,
Day
parking
house.
the trailer in the
Yes.
parking lot.
Because as Tom knows,
Yeah.
that there's like almost no mooring space. So you
Yeah.
get people who have smaller craft who can't literally get a mooring for their boat. So if they want to use it, they got to come launch it for the day, go out, do what they're going to do, and then come home and pick it up. But right now we have the problem that the launch just does not work.
So in that case, they would park the trailer and leave it there all day.
Right.
And there's no restriction on that currently? I mean, if you have a beach
From a
sticker,
harbor
you can do
master's
that.
standpoint, not me, but
Yeah.
from the Parks and Rec, probably not.
No, if you have a beach sticker,
You can do
yeah,
that.
you can
You
do that.
need a beach
And-
sticker and a launch sticker.
And then, does that provide all of the parking for the boat club, that lot? Or does the boat club have its own lot as well?
That number
This is
isn't-
irrelevant of the boat club.
Yeah.
The statement there where it says the boat, including the boat club, should actually be removed because the boat club doesn't have any private parking.
So that's what I'm saying, so where do members of the boat club park when they're using the club to
Depends,
use?
any open space in
In the Pear Tree lot?
the Pear Tree lot.
Okay, so the
I mean,
Pear
I
Tree
parked
lot,
up by the, by the beach facing out to Long Island Sound
okay,
to go to the boat club.
but the Pear Tree lot is servicing the boat club, yeah.
Yes.
No, it's
we-
shared.
Shared.
It's shared.
Shared.
The boat club
Shared,
owns
but
no
I'm saying-
parking, but
But I'm saying, sure, so we have to take that into account.
I don't think you have to take it into account. It's not gonna change.
No, but Neil was making the general statement versus the
Go
two.
back to the aerial view for a sec. One of the things we noticed was that in the southern half of this parking lot, or actually southern 2/3, there's a lot of parking that looks like it should service the beach, and there's very little parking actually striped up near the boat club. So do boat club people, I guess they can't perhaps all park up near the boat club, so they have to then park down toward the beach?
Plus the swing of trailers has to
Yeah.
be able to, they have to have more room for the swing of those trailers. And therefore, that's why it was scarcely lined.
I mean, on the north side of the parking lot, closest to the boat club, there are lined spaces. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, we did see that, yeah.
And then there is a path that isn't, the parking does not go up against the boat club completely to the boat area ramp.
Yeah.
There's some space in between there, but. I don't remember how
We
many.
do have a very schematic site plan that we were going to show at the very end of the slide presentation that gets into some preliminary ideas. And I think we can revisit this then.
I think we need to go.
I just want to say one thing on this page quickly. First off, there is 220 spaces. They're all for public. You're right, Tom. This, including boat clubs, should be strict because there is no assigned parking for anybody. So people just park wherever they want.
Right.
The other thing I want to say is down here at the bottom, pickup area and the kitchen concession area. The Weed Beach has the enclosed area. When it's really crowded down there on a hot day, that really is a bottleneck. Having it open like we have now at Pear Tree gives the kids and parents more area to be able to move. So I just want you to know that that really is congested and it's hot in there, and then people come outside, they can't get their orders, and it's backed up a lot. So I think that, in my opinion, it's nicer to have it open.
And Neil, I was going to say something similar, but not exactly the same. As we toured, our committee made a tour of the beaches, and a lot of us had never been inside the kitchen part of the building. And there was a lot of comments, a lot of surprise was, really? You can pass through in here? I always use the window, So that may not be a real critical resource.
Oh, and one more thing. We have 10 handicap parking spaces at Weed and 7 at Pear Tree. I'd like to see more handicap parking spaces if possible.
If the regulations will probably dictate that.
That's what I was
So
saying.
we haven't gotten to that point
Right.
yet, but the regulations dictated that, that's why we have 10. And since we have more total parking spaces at Pear Tree, I would imagine that we're probably going to have to provide more handicap spaces.
I'm just going to maybe state the obvious here, and that is, I wonder if at some point, and we don't need to make a decision now on it, but I wonder if at some point maybe a traffic study may be appropriate here, because there are peaks, there are times of the year when there's
You're going to have
more or
to do that
less.
on a summer weekend, like July
Well,
4th.
we'll leave it to the experts to figure out when they're going to do it, but this is an area that kind of experiences a lot of different ebbs and flows of traffic here, and I think the point maybe you're raising here, Neil, is that to some extent that we're dealing with something that's at cross purposes. We're dealing with the issue of conservation and kind of maintaining the beach, and we're dealing with asphalt. That asphalt parking lot was placed down in 1974 when people couldn't care less about. So I think it's an important point, and I'm not sure we should just kind of skirt through it. I think we should come back to it, and maybe with your guidance, think about.
Can you go back to that? I'm sorry to keep going back and forth.
Yeah, exactly right.
One of the key components of Weed Beach, one of the mandates that we got from the Weed Beach Building Committee was to reduce the amount of asphalt. That was key. So that's why some planting islands were introduced, and there were different ways to accommodate that and still end up with enough parking. All right, so continuing on. In the next slide, what we did is we actually took the floor plan from Weed Beach and the floor plan from Pear Tree. Just have a look at the sizes of the spaces and that sort of thing. And it's interesting. The one real difference between the two is that we wrapped a porch around Weed Beach and had this sort of open atrium in the middle that separates the concession area from the bathrooms and the other functions to the right. So it appears to be a larger footprint, but when you actually look at the enclosed spaces, it's not all that different. The concession's a little bit larger because we have that, particularly because we have the interior pickup space, but the kitchen itself is 50% larger than the kitchen at Pear Tree. And the bathrooms are sort of the same size. The lifeguard area the lifeguard shack is bigger at Weed, and the first aid area is about the same size. So anyway, we just thought it was an interesting comparison to take a look at the floor plans. I think it also gives everyone a sense of scale for what we're talking about.
Good idea to have it here, yeah.
So then, next, after we sort of looked at everything, we came up with a list of questions that we thought we would bring to the committee. First one gets right into that issue of parking and can we reduce the amount of asphalt, maybe reduce the parking a bit, but still provide adequate parking and circulation for boat trailers and that sort of thing. So that's something that we just touched on a bit.
And I hope you remember that the answer is no.
Well, I'm not convinced
so
the
sure
answer is
about
no.
that's true.
I wouldn't, no, I'm completely open-minded about it.
Yeah.
And, maybe what we may be thinking about is the possibility of, look, I mean, we may have to consider maybe limiting access in terms of how many people could be there on a given day as kind of a counterbalance to protecting the asset that we have, which is a beach.
I think at some point also it's going to come down to if we need the dune to break the wave action. Either you're going to lose beach area because you're building the dunes towards the water, or you're going to lose some parking.
I almost think the parking discussion really needs to be held with Dan and his team involved,
Yeah.
because I think that
Yes.
the coastal protection piece of that is an important part of the discussion.
Just understand, on a summer day,
Mhm.
on a weekend summer day, the parking lot is full.
Oh, no, I do understand.
And I think very important is the boats and the trailers. There are quite a few parked now in the summer, and as you said, if the ramp is improved, there's a very long wait list to get mooring. So people that have smaller boats, this is the only place they can launch. I mean, Weed Beach no longer has an area where you can
Not for
launch
cars.
small boats.
You can do small boats.
There's
but
nothing
not
to
for-
swing around and no place to store them.
I think it's
So
a
this is
topic
the
that
only
needs
place.
further discussion.
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
and further
That's what
analysis,
I want to
really.
say, it's very important that
Yeah.
that analysis be done, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, a more precise analysis.
Are there any overflow areas, like for trailers, or in the area, or are they just?
No,
No,
you
that's
have-
No, that area is limited to.
It's all within that little area.
Yeah.
When I mentioned the boat club before, I think what I was getting at is can we put our arms around, like on a typical weekend, how many spaces are utilized by people going to the boat club?
You can't, Laura.
No, I'm not saying you can limit it,
No,
I'm
no,
not,
no.
I'm
You
just saying,
can't, you can't quantify it because,
we just have no sense?
no,
Hey guys,
because,
I think it sounds to me like it's traffic, I'm not an expert, but it sounds to me like it's a traffic
no,
study.
it's not. It's the way that the town residents use the beach.
But that's what we're
The
talking
park,
about.
the park and recs have added a bunch of kayak racks, which has limited the space that is closest to the Darien Boat Club. On a regular summer day, as I said, if I get down there at 1 o'clock on a regular summer weekend, I'm parking upwards towards the concession areas, the building areas. Just, that's what it is.
Okay.
The area that is closest to the boat club is not reserved for the boat club members at
I
all, by any
understand
stretch
that,
of
but
the
if we
imagination.
had a sense of how, for instance, how many boat club members are
Hey
there?
guys, I think we need to move along, we've got a limited amount of time with these guys, I think it's a study, it's a topic that requires a more precise understanding.
I did want to say one thing though. There are a lot of activities that go on at Pear Tree. There's road races, there's other things. The boat club has 3 picnics a year down, and parking is an issue. And if we have to move parking, I'd hate to see Burns take up 5 parking spaces. But if we had to move parking back a little bit and still maintain 220 spaces, great. If we have, there's issues down at Weed that people have mentioned about the parking down there with all the grasses and all that stuff. It's not gonna be a great
Hey,
site
Cheryl,
for.
with all due, I think we're getting ahead of
But,
ourselves.
well,
'Cause
I
part
need
of-
them to know that there's,
But hold
a
on.
lot goes on
Part of the
down there.
mandate, I think, certainly that comes through the commission, is to protect and preserve the beach that's there.
Well, yeah.
And I think we're
We have
looking to
move
these guys to
things.
guide us in terms of,
Right.
you know, what steps need to be taken to take that beach as it exists today and ensure that it's gonna be there 20, 30, 50,
Well, I
100 years
just
from
want
now.
them to know that there's a lot of.
So what I'm saying is I think we may be just getting ahead of ourselves. and
Okay.
Spending a lot of time on something that we're not prepared to discuss fully.
Right, I think that's true, but also, it's obvious that that's a hot topic, so.
No question about it.
Something that we
Yeah,
will
for obvious
look at
reasons.
Very
too.
carefully.
Yeah.
So I think the question to you, can we reduce spaces, is not necessarily
Yeah.
at this point.
All right.
Let's let Neil go through without interrupting in public comment so we can get,
All right.
we want to get through, we
We
want to
do
have
wanna
room
get
for
through.
public comment at the end, and we don't want to overstep Lori's meeting at 7:30,
So,
which we will do if Neil doesn't get through.
okay, well, a couple of these questions we do want your input on, like the next one, how large should the multipurpose room be? You know, one model would be to look at the gathering room at the Wheat Beach paddle pavilion that we met in with the commission last week. And I guess the question is that large enough? Do we want something larger? Another question that we had was whether or not it should be heated and air conditioned for year-round use, and whether it should have its own bathrooms.
Well, again, a different question is, do we need it there?
Well, it was part of the requirements that we were
Understand.
given to design.
And we're also
so-
discussing what the requirements are, and one of the questions is that one of the things we could put on the table to look at better to see if we actually need a multi-purpose room?
Well, that's been voted on already, and it's been kind of acknowledged.
Well, but
and-
I think when you go to the RTM ultimately for money, you're gonna have to define the usage of that multipurpose room. I mean, is it going to be year-round? What is it going to be used for? Is it going to be locked? Is it rental? How big should it be?
These are questions, I think, Martha, for the commission, right? I mean,
No,
We're the-
but
They
not for
haven't
the
defined
commission
it
at the
for us.
moment.
They have simply said a
Okay.
multi-purpose room.
Right.
So either they define it or somebody's gonna have to define it.
Okay, they haven't defined it.
And-
Let's
and-
let's
and
just
we
take
will.
a guess. The room at the paddle tennis is probably a little on the small side, and it doesn't have any storage.
Mhm.
So let's kind of just take that as a basis.
But
Okay, we have to get through Neil's presentation.
I realize that, but I mean, I think it's fair to make comments. It just seems to me that multi-purpose room was really designed in concert with the paddle tennis courts. And as an aside, they're renting it out part of the year when paddle tennis people are not using it. But its main function is what's for paddle tennis. What is the main function, or what is the function of flexible space here? Perhaps we don't need it at this small beach.
Right, and I feel differently. Parks and Recreation Department needs space to program. And we are spaced out here in Town Hall, and we're now using the paddle hut for programming. So we need space, and I think what space isn't a great space at this beautiful part of town. So it would be phenomenal to be able to program there, and it'd be phenomenal to be able to rent it out for gathering space.
Hey, guys, look, with all due respect, I think it's fair to ask Pam, our director, and maybe the representative of the commission about size and function and programming, just to get clarification. But I don't think it's appropriate for this committee to be discussing whether it should be there or not. That's a discussion that's taken place multiple times. And I think based upon the charter that we've been given by the Board of Selectmen, it's not our role to discuss whether or not those items should be on the list any longer.
Well, and to take issue, after the charter was approved, year-round dining space was added, and it was found it's not zoned for that. And so kind of last-minute compromise, somebody threw in the term flexible space. Nobody has defined that. I feel that you have to prove to me that we need it. What kinds of programs are you talking about so we can design the appropriate space? And again, remember, this is a small beach. you add flexible space, you increase the footprint of a building that's already gonna be elevated. You have to weigh all those
Sure,
things, I
sure,
think.
yeah.
So I think it's.
Seasonal programming.
It's
Yeah.
worth
Seasonal
considering,
programming.
that's all. I mean, nobody's saying one way or the other, but I think this has to be, a decision has to be made by
About
somebody.
whether it's there, I need some
Yeah.
clarification about whether it's there or not.
Yeah.
I think that- I think
that decision
That
has
decision has been made.
It
I
was
think it's
been
fair
made.
for us to kind of, you
It
know.
was realized by the commission that the restaurant was not approved and put in there correctly. That should not have happened, frankly. When the commission realized that, it was removed. There was actually quite a bit of discussion following a public hearing and an agreement that we would utilize the term flexible space. That
Well,
was
at the
agreed
last
upon.
minute,
No,
Jamie
it wasn't.
suggested that.
No,
And
no, no,
the
but
commission
hold on.
voted
Well,
on it.
look,
Okay.
we're wasting a lot of valuable time, but I think
All right.
it's important here because we're, make sure, you know, you start well, you finish well.
Yeah.
That issue of 2 multipurpose rooms was added kind of after the commission voted on the items that came out of the master plan. And once it was clarified and that was more, you know, that was better understood, I brought that back to the commission and said, hey, guys, we may have overstepped in terms of expanding, you know, that list beyond what was really initially voted on. So we brought that back, we voted on it, we discussed it, we voted on it, and that's how 2 multipurpose rooms came, got redefined as 1 room as a flexible meeting space. So look, we can spend our time having this kind of conversation about whether or not you guys want to question what was voted on by the commission, which I think is going to be a complete waste of time for this committee, or we can move on and discuss and get clarification for Neil. And certainly challenge Pam. I think that's absolutely fair, you know, to the extent that that's required, to clarify some of these things. And I suggest we do that.
So
These are good
perhaps,
questions, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it should be clarified because, as I
Pam,
said,
can you bring us at our next meeting a semi-report of what you see in these rooms?
We're growing, we're up and coming.
Well,
We're
this
growing.
was also going to reflect on the parking too.
No,
So-
seasonally, Cheryl. We wouldn't do something programmatic during the heavy season of that. But come September through March, when it's empty,
September, a lot of people
October.
are there.
So look, I think a takeaway here is we should get some clarity on at least Parks and Rec's sense
Sure.
of the size of that meeting space.
Sure.
And bring that back and,
Yeah.
and provide that as
can
feedback.
do that.
Or
but
appropriate.
perhaps for tonight, we should maybe let Neil more
Yeah,
on
move
the
it along.
presentation.
Yeah, right.
Because I do have a meeting at 7:30. We have guest speakers, we have a public hearing.
We're gonna get through this.
We will get through it. All right, so then the next question was, what we noticed that in the existing toilet rooms, restrooms are indoor showers, and we wondered whether or not we need to keep them or not, and could we replace them with outdoor showers? We think that would probably be a good option. I don't know that many people take indoor showers anymore in bathhouses, so, but
Just on the same level, I mean, parents with little children go into the shower room and want, you know, they talk to children before they come out again.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Hey guys, we'll allow for
We're gonna
comment.
have room for public comment after this.
I think there's plenty of room for dressing and changing
Yeah.
in there, but just, do we need that space for indoor showers anymore? It looked to me when we looked at the existing building that really, nobody really used it.
And outdoor showers can be shielded, so, you know, you see somebody's feet, but nothing else.
Next question concerned whether or not we needed to have a family bathroom, you know, which could double as an ADA accessible bathroom. There were discussions about that when we did Weed Beach, whether they should have a separate bathroom where, you know, if father has a little girl and he needs to take her in and change her, and doesn't perhaps want to do that in the men's room. So, don't know whether it's necessary to have a second one or not, but that's something we'd like to get some feedback from you on. Next question really got into the sizes of lifeguard shack, lifeguard storage, and first aid areas in the current building. Are those large enough for your current needs, or do we need to go larger, or are they too large? So we'd like to get some feedback on that. Next item was something that we thought about as an option, an alternative to a concession stand was that you could actually have rotating food trucks come in. And, you know, that way you wouldn't have to worry about building the concession, or in a new building, building it up above the FEMA reg. So that's, I think, an interesting item for discussion at some point. And finally, the question was regarding the existing concession area. Is that large enough? If we were to design, in the scheme that we present to you that has a brand new building, do you envision the concession stand being larger than what you have now, the kitchen area? Or not?
So Pam, I think you have some takeaways here, my sense is,
Yeah.
right? In terms of, you know, the existing space allocated to the lifeguard area. We also have the question about the police
Right.
storage, Darien police storage that's there.
And that has been confirmed.
Yeah, I took that off because
Yeah.
it sounds like that
Yeah,
was
they
perfectly
need-
clear.
They need that
it.
space, so we do need to
And
create that.
And that space, what we're talking about there, just to bring everybody else into the loop, is the amount of space that's there is adequate for what their needs are? Is that what we
For the
confirm?
police department?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I did confirm.
So they don't need a space that's double the size of what's there, or larger?
No, because they also have an office at the hotel.
Got it.
It's purely a storage office.
Right.
For their equipment.
And the storage room at Boat Club wouldn't be set for the shift.
It's not a storage.
It's a little office.
It's an office for the Marine Police and
Okay.
clearly the Darien Harbor Master, but yeah, I don't have a key or.
Okay.
Don't use it, but.
I mean, the one here maybe that we may just want to get a sense of the committee on is the family bathroom. I'm not sure we need to take a vote on it, but maybe just get a sense so we can provide some guidance.
Well, I have a comment. Right now, people walk the loop and use the beach all year long, and we have a porta potty that comes off-season. If you had a family bathroom, perhaps you could have it facing outward into the parking lot, have doors open so it wouldn't be a security issue, and perhaps you could eliminate the need for a porta potty, but you would have one bathroom that's open year-round, and again, maybe you position it in such a fashion that, you know.
Right, the expense would be a little bit more, and I can bring details to that.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
in terms of having it cleaned daily would be something we'd have to.
And certainly
consider.
eliminating the porta potty in the
Right,
process.
but it's just a thought, but,
Yeah, I think definitely getting rid of the porta potties.
We gotta have people.
What's the process of the weed? Off-season
They're
They're
locked,
locked. They're
and
locked.
because we have the paddle hut that's open.
for restrooms?
Yep.
Are they
so there are
winterized?
bathrooms.
And they're cleaned.
Are they winterized? The water
Yes,
drained over
yes.
at Weed Beach?
Yes, winterized
so we
at
have-
the concession at the bathhouse. But we have the alternative of the paddle hut that is cleaned daily and open to the public.
Oh, yeah. And there's heat in that.
Yes.
Sure.
I understand the issue of the unisex bathrooms, but I'm not a fan of it. I just don't think it's the right way to go.
Same thing, Cheryl, we're getting back to the issue, we're not asked to, we're just.
Well, we just asked if our comments on it, and Mike just asked, so I'm just
Yeah,
giving my
That wasn't
comment.
part of the
That wasn't
original
part of
program we were given, it was just a
Yeah.
question, yeah.
It's
Yeah, I
a
actually-
question, I'm not a fan of that.
Yeah, I mean, I actually interpret it as family, back to Neil's point, if it's a dad with a daughter, you know,
Yeah,
maybe
one
uncomfortable
dad,
going in,
yeah.
you know, like I have two girls I raised, you know, I understood how uncomfortable it was to try to find a place to go with them, so I was doing it from that,
Yeah,
looking
see,
at it from that
I actually
perspective.
like them too, but.
Yeah,
Yeah, I just wanted to be perfectly clear. It's a single bathroom. It's not a stall situation. So when the door is locked, it's
I know, but it's still
cleanliness. Or,
sharing the same John,
Yeah.
let's say that. Okay.
Okay,
okay,
onward to the next slide.
page 2.
I think this program adjacency matrix was really done more for us to try and figure out what needed to be where, next to what. And I guess the takeaways here are the circles that have the colored in, the blackened circles. Lifeguard office has to be next to lifeguard storage. Outdoor showers have to be near the sandy beach. The parking lot has to be near the sandy beach. Other things, you know, desired, we would like the, you know, restrooms obviously have to be close to everything.
What are the initials, HCV?
Handicap,
Sorry, thank you.
wheelchair accessible. We think that it would be ideal if the lifeguard, little guard shack was near the first aid station. But in a scenario where we in one of the scenarios, we might end up with first aid on the second floor and the lifeguard shack on the first floor, so.
So Neil, that black dot that's on the far right, how do I interpret what that means?
Okay, so it's outdoor showers. You take that line all the way up to Sandy Beach, take that line all the way over, and they intersect.
Oh, I see.
So that guy,
Got it.
so those would be required.
Got it.
We want the outdoor showers to be accessible from the beach,
Got it.
on both beaches, actually. All right, so now, now that we have all that information, we're starting to think about how do we approach actually building this? How much of the existing building can we reuse, salvage, reuse, renovate? How much has to be new? And so we've sort of gone from the spectrum of trying to reuse as much as possible of the existing building to the other end of the spectrum being knock down the existing building and build a whole new building. So in the first approach, we would repurpose the entire existing building. Now, granted, we don't have a lot of money to renovate either part, but one could argue that in the bathrooms we might be able to put some new tile up and new plumbing fixtures, and we might be able to get away with renovating them without spending a whole lot of money. And in the other building, it's mostly storage. So one could argue that maybe we don't really need to make it very glamorous. Maybe we can just leave it as it is, give it a fresh coat of paint. We do have a little more money to spend on that building, so maybe we do change it a bit. But one thing that we were really looking at as a concept in all of the schemes was that we could leave even if we leave the concrete block buildings, we could screen them in such a way that what we're building doesn't touch necessarily the existing building. So it's not considered to be money that we're spending renovating the buildings, but we give it a fresh look. And those are the kinds of details that we'll present the next time we see you, but just so you know what we've been thinking about. So, and then in this first scheme, obviously the multipurpose room and the outdoor dining deck would go upstairs. And if we go to the next slide, you'll see that just as a schematic diagram, the ground floor on the left, the restrooms stay where they are. The second building, all the functions stay exactly as they are. They get spruced up a bit. We take the available funds as far as we can. And then above that, we would have the multipurpose room, which is a new program element that has to conform to the FEMA regulations, so it has to be on another level. And then if we take the roofs off the first two buildings, and they're currently pitched roofs, we could have a flat roof on top of them that also has the multipurpose room above it, but also the roof deck for the dining deck. So that way we're not expanding a big footprint, we're basically keeping everything on the footprint of what's there, maybe slightly expanding it in the same location.
So just to clarify then, like with the existing buildings, the structure that you just described that would be upper level would not be touching the existing buildings?
Right. We would sort of design it so it hovers over it. And so as one looked at it from outside, it would look like a brand new building. But the two pods that currently are walled by concrete block walls would be underneath and sort of screened. So that's approach number one. Approach number two is a similar approach with one exception, and that is that with the first approach, we were looking to really keep the footprint as tight as possible. But we also realized that if we keep the existing 2 buildings and renovate them, there's no reason we have to put the new multipurpose room above that. That could be located anywhere else on the site. So in this case, it's sort of really approach 1B as opposed to the other one was 1A, where we, if you go to the next slide, you'll see that what we've done is we've pulled it off to the right. So this new flex room would be its own structure that one could either park underneath or possibly have food trucks in the food truck scheme could park underneath there. They're protected from the weather then in inclement weather or really brutal sun. And then from there, people can then go up to the roof deck, the dining deck, which is over the existing building and has tremendous views out in all directions. But then that building actually, the existing building will actually seem smaller than it is now because we'll be taking the pitched roof off and putting a flat deck on top of it. So.
And Neil, you believe you can do that with a roof in the context of the existing? Oh, actually, so the budget would be for the new building. So in other words, you're not actually replacing the roof with a flat roof on the existing buildings. You're actually removing the roof.
Right.
So it's just a cost of demoing the existing roof.
Correct.
And then placing something above it in a new structure that would have
Which
its
would
own
be
budget.
new structure, yeah. And perhaps some screens between the two so that you don't get mosquitoes in the bathrooms and the lifeguard shack and the concession room. You know, I think we could argue that, you know, that they're separate buildings and, you know, that would allow us to go as far as we can with the existing building. So, well, that's approach number 2. For approach number 3, we were anticipating that we would just repurpose the bathroom block. And once again, new tile on the walls, new bathroom fixtures, but we feel pretty strongly that that wants to be at the ground level, accessible from the parking lot, from both beaches. And so we like to keep it there, whether it's new or not, but in this case, it would be renovated. We renovate that, and then we tear down the other building and replace that with a building that's really just storage. And so if you look at the downside there, we'd have restrooms that would be in the repurposed part, and then storage, lifeguard storage, the guard shack, and the police storage would all be in a new building, but it would be built at grade because the functions are storage, and I think we can meet the FEMA requirements if we're not building habitable space down there. Now, one thing that Tom just said that I didn't realize was that we thought it was police storage. That was locked, so we couldn't get inside. But it looks like that's now an office. So if that's an office, maybe that has to be.
No, it's not an office, it's storage.
It's all storage?
Yes.
The
Okay.
police have their office they're in both levels.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. Okay, that's great. Then that would be perfect. So in that case, this new storage pod, you know, would be built at grade, and then above that, we would bring the concession, the outdoor dining deck, the first aid office, and the multi-purpose room would all go up above that.
Are you still talking about building over the existing structure?
Yeah, so if we go to the next, so this is really what that would look like. And we'd have, again, the 2 elements on the ground floor, restrooms being repurposed, the other element being a new structure. And then on the upper level, we would have essentially a roof deck that wraps around and houses a multi-purpose room and concession and a first aid office all up there. That might not leave enough room for a dining deck, so we may have to expand the dining deck a bit if we go with this scheme. And those are the kinds of things that we'll get into next time we meet with And then with the last thing would be a whole new building. And in this case, the storage elements would still be on the ground floor, but we would have to move the restrooms up to the 17-foot elevation. So you'd have restrooms, concession, the dining deck, the first aid, and the multi-purpose room all up at that second floor. So in this case, I think you're going to get a larger footprint upstairs than you have downstairs. And one of the things that I mentioned earlier that we feel strongly about is that the bathrooms really should be at the ground floor. So with this fourth approach, we really are not restricted to the current location of the building, the current footprint. So if we go to the next slide, you'll see and this is sort of random, no particular reason for this form at this point, but just showing that the building could take a different form or different configuration. It doesn't have to sit in that rectangular area that the current building sits. That takes you through.
And that particular one doesn't have a dining deck on it.
It does. It's between the multi-purpose room and the other block that has concession, first aid, and the restrooms in it. Yeah, that's it. We haven't forgotten about that.
Now, am I reading this correctly? The building would have to, the floor level of a new building would have to start at a 15.5 feet elevation?
17 feet. So if we go to the next slide.
Yeah. Okay, but
So-
great.
One of the things we next tried to come to terms with was, what are all the vertical elevations on site? So in the top slide, we start with mean low high water. Let me just point. So this line's mean low high water. Then this is the 0.0 reference point. So mean low water is below that. Mean high water is 3.4 feet above that. That's this line. This is the elevation of the existing bathhouse floor.
7 feet.
Almost
7.9 feet. And then the FEMA flood regulation for this zone is 15, which is this line. But the regulations require the finished floor surface of any habitable space to be 2 feet above that. So that gives us the 17-foot height. So we're really talking about anything that we build that's new construction, that is habitable space, is going to have to be about 9 feet, a little over 9 feet above the existing bathhouse elevation, the floor of the bathhouse.
Excuse me, 9 feet above the floor, not the roof.
No, the floor,
floor.
not the roof.
Okay, so how high is the roof peak now?
The ridge,
Yeah.
I would bet that's about 15 feet above the grade, which would put it at, I think it's 15, maybe 12 or 13 feet
That's
above.
an accurate representation of the existing pool house on that drawing.
Yeah, for me.
So it's a visual reference.
So I would say that the peak of the existing building is probably somewhere around elevation 22.
Yeah.
22, 23, something like that.
So probably the floor would be kind of even with the eaves.
Correct, right, exactly.
Mm.
Something like that. Now, the other slide, the other important part is how do we get up to that? If we have to get up to 8 feet. Yeah, this is a better example of it. So this shows you this is the water's edge coming down up to this plinth that has the gazebo on it, and then back down to the current bathhouse sort of walk around it is there. FEMA's elevation is up at 17. So to get up there, we have a couple options. We can either go up a flight of steps, which is just like going from one floor to the next in the house, would require 16 risers. Or we can go up on a ramp, which would require 134 lineal feet of ramp space to get up that 9 feet. Now, because anything on the second floor has to be accessible to a wheelchair by the building code, the ADA code, we have to find a way to get up to that second floor, either through a ramp, or another option would be an elevator. We've done a little research on elevators. They do make exterior elevators. And that's something I think we have to very carefully consider, though, because we're concerned about things like maintenance and exposure to the weather and that sort of thing. So,
Neil, have you considered in any form integrating the gazebo or the plinth with any structures?
yes.
Maybe kind of
Yeah.
that's serving as a way to kind of gradually work its way.
Yeah.
Because at the moment the gazebo is not ADA accessible.
Correct.
And that might also be a nice feature to consider.
So, with that information, then we started to look at different approaches to vertical circulation. How does one get from parking lot grade up to whatever we put on the second floor? In this first scenario, we wanted to do explore something that's very compact. So we would have the exterior elevator in the middle and we'd wrap a staircase around that. It's a single core, and that's what you see here. It minimizes the footprint, but once again, you're dealing with this exterior elevator. In the second approach, we looked at how one might wrap the ramp around the building and get up there. And in this particular concept, you can either come up steps here. You start here, you go up to a landing, which is also accessed by steps. You go up to a second landing a little higher, which is accessed from the parking lot by a few more steps. You go up to a third landing, which is accessed from this west beach by a little bit more run of steps, and then finally you're up to the dining deck. Concession, multi-purpose room, perhaps, steps down to the beach from there. So that's one way where people can get access either directly up to the dining deck or from other areas through a combination of stairs and ramps. In the next,
And just to clarify, in that instance, we don't have to go back one page, but you referenced 16 steps based upon kind of the grade.
right,
So are we talking, in that particular instance, 4 steps in each of those, in a pinwheel ramp? Or is it,
Right.
or does it depend on kind of where?
we have to work that out with the ramp, but it could be 4 steps, 8 steps, 12 steps.
Oh, it could be as much as 12 steps then.
Right, so, in that, Rob, if you go back to the second approach, here, this would be 4 steps, 8 steps, 12 steps, all 16.
Oh, I see.
There's tiers along the way.
Got it.
Yeah.
So, in this idea, this is one thing we were grappling with was because we have so much ramp necessary. We wondered, was there a way to make the ramp not just functional, but make it part of the experience of actually using this structure? So in this case, we have located smaller dining decks at various heights. So if one could come up this ramp to the first landing and have a dining deck there, and then go up to the next landing, dining deck there, up further and have a dining deck here, and then finally all the way up to the top. And, or from the beach or the parking lot, one can just go straight up the steps if you don't want to.
Neil, in that approach, if you're in the parking lot, where would you start the ramp? In that lower right-hand corner there?
Yes,
Yeah.
right here. So this is right up there, the first landing. And of course, these are optional. You can use them if you want or not, but start here, and then the stairs are there. And in this last approach, we tried to integrate the gazebo into the whole thing, and we sort of took the last scheme and went a little further with it in terms of making this an experience. So if you want to get up to the dining deck, you just go right up on the stairs. And otherwise, you can really wind your way through and up to the gazebo, and then back up to the dining deck. So it's more of an experience that would be used by perhaps, not just people in wheelchairs.
Beautiful for wedding ceremonies.
In skateboards.
Neil, are we, in this scheme, are we looking at like a new building where the bathrooms are up on the second floor, or you think you could
Now,
use this approach?
these four approaches to vertical circulation really are not tied to any particular building layout schemes that we showed you previously. They're sort of, you can mix and match. There are ways to use each of these with different building layout schemes. So after doing all that, we sort of took stock and said, okay, well, what have we learned? Where are we going with this? And these are sort of our takeaways or our conclusions. And we think that the existing bathhouse should be renovated. We'd like to explore that. And that there are certain things like the restrooms and the first aid station really want to be at beach level. We don't want them to be up 9 feet in the air. And then the next thing is that there are other program elements that can be either housed in the existing building or in a new pod, and that would be the things like the police storage, the lifeguard shack, and the lifeguard storage. And thirdly, the multi-purpose room and the concession, we feel that they're habitable space, they house expensive equipment, so they really should be located up out of the floodplain. And last is just that we liked the option that we might consider the rotating food trucks instead of the concession. We just finished a new building for Two Roads Brewing. I think we told you that, and they have 2 brewery buildings now that are serviced by food trucks on a rotating basis. They even have a menu board of which trucks are going to be there, and it's very effective. It works well for them. Now, I don't know how many food trucks are out there and how difficult it is to get them to be, to come on a consistent basis, but it could be a lot of fun and something to think about.
By the way, it wouldn't be necessarily mutually exclusive, right? I mean, we could
No.
do both.
It could be both, yes.
And maybe by doing both, it means we can reduce the size of the concession area even.
Simplifying that.
Yeah.
Sure.
We have to check with rules and regs about whether we could have a food truck in the public area.
Yep.
Yeah, you can.
Permanently? I mean,
You can bid it out, absolutely. In Guilford, we bid out the job, and the one who's most willing to give the most money to have it up at the beach for the summer gets it.
There's no zoning restrictions on it.
We don't have food trucks in Darien. I didn't think there was
Yeah, we
a
have
special permit.
through Planet Zoning, they allow trucks.
You checked with Jeremy?
Yeah, I sat with Dave and discussed the
Oh,
whole thing.
okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Okay, so something to further.
Can I just ask one question of Pam?
But Patty, you need to wait until the public comment.
Okay, all right,
Patty?
sure, no problem.
Okay, so then our final thoughts on the vertical circulation is we really don't know that the exterior elevator is a practical solution. We're concerned about maintenance and, you know, vandalism and that sort of thing. And in this scenario, it's not really, it wouldn't be set up so that it would have continuous use. It would be more like a once in a while use. So I just don't even know that the cost justifies it. But so our thinking would be not really to seriously explore that as a solution to vertical circulation.
It also would require 220 volt service. In probably only down there it's single phase, so you'd have to have some kind of transformer. It's probably not practical that way.
Yeah, although they do make vertical wheelchair lifts, which might not require the 220, I'm not sure. But I'm even more concerned about those because they're sort of open cabs and totally susceptible to the weather.
If the outdoor elevators at the railroad station are any example, it's not a good solution.
Yeah.
Those have been
I don't
maintenance
think they
nightmare.
ever work.
Yeah.
And I don't think just a wheelchair lift, to me, a wheelchair lift doesn't address the spirit of what we're trying to accomplish. There are many individuals who may not be in a wheelchair, but wouldn't be able to climb that flight of stairs, and then the lift, you just kind of, they're stuck.
Well, and then so our final thought really is that we think this ramp is a design opportunity. It doesn't have to be seen as this, you know, foreboding thing. Maybe there's a way to incorporate it in the building in such a way that it actually, you know, enlivens the building and enlivens the experience. So we'd like to go in that direction. And the final slide goes way back to the beginning of our discussion tonight, where we started to think about how we might renovate the parking lot. And you know, one of the things so at this edge here, whether there are dunes or some sort of a planted area that is meant to, you know, as part of the coastal restoration design, that is either going to be built this way, which will take away some of the sandy beach, or it's going to have to be built that way to take away some of the parking. So in this particular scheme, we took this first row of parking, we moved it back, and then we took away little fingers here to provide pedestrian access to the beach between the dune areas. So you lost a couple of parking spaces there. You also lost a couple of parking spaces here because this moved back. We also built this out a bit, so we lost a couple of parking spaces here, just because I think it's important to provide a better arrival point for pedestrians. Right now, you park right up against the building, and it's really not user-friendly. So I think if we brought this out as some sort of a plaza, that sort of eases the transition from the parking lot to the building or the beach itself, that would be preferable. Here on this side, we have kept the parking where it is. The coastal restoration dunes, or whatever they end up being, would be built toward the beach, so we're going to lose a little beach space there. Once again, we've introduced these pedestrian fingers between dunes to get you from the parking lot into the beach. We've also introduced little planted islands at certain places here, thinking that they're far enough away from the boat area that boats can come in and boat trailers can come in and back in, and we're really not affecting them by adding these islands. And one other thing we did here is we added parking along here, because right now there's currently no parking along this edge. So we thought it was a good trade-off to just move the parking back in here to add this parking. And once again, a couple islands, and maybe that's not practical for the boat club. But in doing all of this, we went from 220 spaces down to, let's see, it was 220 plus 7 handicap spots. We now have 204 plus 6. So we've lost 17 spots, which is not a huge amount given the fact that you have so much more than you do at Weed Beach, but that might be a non-starter for you, I don't know. But that was our thinking, our initial thoughts on how we might make the parking lot function a little better.
When you're parking facing into the beach, and you have the, for lack of a better term, the vegetation or the whatever is the proper term, is that low to the ground? Will it grow above above the cars? I mean, if I park in any of those waterfront zones,
Yeah.
can I see the water?
That's a question that Dan's going to have to answer. Dan from Weston and Sampson will answer when he comes next. You know, we had this same discussion during the Weed Beach design process. Initially, the dunes were planted pretty high. There was some pushback from neighbors and from the committees. They were then lowered a bit. You know, there's a trade-off, because on one hand, we have to do something to preserve the beach, keep the beach from washing into the parking lot every time there's floodwaters. On the other hand, we know that people want to be able to pull up and park and look out to the water. So we are going to take both of those objectives in hand when we come up with a solution.
Well, interestingly enough, there is some that are taking away the view if it were that high, but yet you added some spaces along the beach that we never had where people can pull up and there's no...
Yeah, that seemed like a lost opportunity to us. Why not use that area to park and look out to the water?
You've got the kayak wrecks there now. though.
Right at the very end, but you still opened up quite a few that aren't in front of the racks.
It also moved more of the spaces closer to the boat club, so that people who are coming to go to their boats to park near the club.
Yeah, the only area there is we might need to widen the space for access to the beach where you're over by the boat club, because as somebody just mentioned, the kayak wrecks. You need to have, you know, be able to get to the racks, get your boats off the racks and whatnot, and you don't want those racks on the macadam. The thing you also need to make sure of is when you're doing your design that the boat club has, forgive me for not knowing the number, 10,000 gallon tank buried in the sand.
Yeah.
In front of the coke rack, in front of on the parking side of the boat, the kayak racks, which obviously isn't movable.
You know, I don't know if it kind of works in, but maybe you can also just consider an alternate location for the kayak racks, recognizing that, you know, it needs to be easy for folks to get their kayaks in and out of the water, but
If we have
Sounds
an
like the-
elevated building,
yeah, I mean, it sounds like the kayak racks are maybe not in the optimal space, given some of the things we're kind of talking about here, so.
That's our
On
decision.
this beach or...
That would be our discussion if we could move them someplace else.
Do the
We're
kayak
talking about
racks,
our towns.
I know, that's what I'm talking about too.
Well, I guess I'm just responding to the fact that it's come up more than once this evening, that they're kind of in a place where maybe they're not optimally located, so.
Well, I think the space, they're optimally located today in a space that's acceptable.
Right, but I'm talking about in the context of what Neil's presented.
No, that's what I'm saying.
But
you know.
if you move them, I mean, you take up beach space, and right now they're kind of over those oil tanks, aren't they? Or
But we don't know if you
close to
take
it.
up beach space. I mean, we've got structures now. We've got,
It's a
you know,
good discussion point.
Yeah.
you may not- Well, let me just be clear. I would not be in favor of taking up beach space. What I'm suggesting is if they could be integrated into, like,
Yeah.
a kayak storage integrated into the structures that we're talking about here, then it's, I think, something to consider. Martha, you looking?
I know, I think you have a lot of interesting ideas that I'm going to look at very closely. I just wonder, did you at all consider the concept of renovating the existing building and then putting grade level dining decks and pergolas or anything like that? Did you see that as a viable option?
I think in all of our schemes, we've shown the dining deck up at the second level just to get it elevated and have better views out to the water. Plus, we had the opportunity, once we take, assuming we do one of the schemes where we're taking the roof off the existing building, we have to cover that with something, so it's an opportunity to have it up at that level. If we had dining decks at grade, we would obviously be expanding the footprint and taking up some beach space.
I have two things. First off, on the dining decks. There are a lot of handicapped people that use this beach for exercise because it's flat, it's a walkable area and stuff. If we could put a dining deck downstairs, it would be, and keep the concession down, that would be easier for people that are handicapped. And I have a walking issue, and I have a few friends that have walking issues. So to walk that ramp all the way up and then carry my lunch back down is difficult. And so I think that that's really got to be a concern, because I've spent a lot of time on crutches and wheelchairs. So I can relate to all of that. The other thing I wanted to say was the trees that you have or plantings that you have in the parking lot area. Can we go back to that slide, the last one?
Sorry, it'll take me a minute.
Are they, I see green in there, in between the parking spaces. Are they trees? Are they grasses like what's over at Weed Beach? And are
We
they?
haven't gotten to that level of detail.
Oh, okay,
It's
just a
just a
design.
concept. just
Okay.
a
Because I was
thought.
wondering if that's what lost the parking spaces.
Yes,
Okay, so
those
if,
islands would take up some parking area, yes.
okay. And you do feel that by having the parking spaces over there in front to the side of the boat club area that weren't there before, up on the
Yeah.
top,
Mhm.
that there is enough room there, because it's so narrow in there and the boat ramp is staying where it is.
So in that,
So you have enough room up there to back up these SUVs?
They're gonna take out some of
We're
the
gonna take out
other
some
lots.
so
Right, to
right
move,
now,
push
this
it in.
parking comes out further to there.
Right.
And the access road is right along the beach.
Mhm.
So we realized that if we pull that back,
Okay,
we would give up maybe 4 spots, maybe 6 spots maximum, but we gain all these.
right.
Yeah.
So you get more parking closer to the boat club.
No,
Right.
Plus more parking that's looking out to the water.
And one more thing, the kayaks area where it is now, is in a good spot because it's not in the swim area. The swim area is marked, with the buoys in the summertime, so they're to the right of the swim area, so they can launch right there. So
I
I don't know.
confess
if
that I
we
don't
would-
know where the kayaks are now.
Okay, well, they're right up,
Up in here?
No,
No,
Back
that's
where
not the
they're-
right.
Back-
lower,
Right.
up too high, to go up.
right
Right
back
about
there,
there.
right where
And
the
up against
split
the
is.
road.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
they're,
Right,
they're
Got it.
horizontal,
Got it. Okay.
horizontal to the road.
And we mark off a swim area for the back beach. We call that the back beach. So they are beyond the swim area, so they could go straight out and into that waterway.
So
So,
that's a good location for them.
so it's a good location for them because anywhere else would be, in the front beach would be all in the swim area, and the rest of the back beach is a swim area.
Do the swim areas spring right from the jetties?
Yeah. Yes, they do.
I have a different question on the parking lot. Maybe this is, I'll just put it out there, maybe this is for Dan and company, but is there a way to create, I'll use the term perforation, like additional perforation in the blacktop that could be, that wouldn't compromise parking areas? So in other words, have people parking on something that might be, whatever, planted so it's not getting washed away, but it's permeable.
Mhm.
Because blacktop is blacktop. It's kind of, once again, it was used,
Sure.
fairly commonly in the past, but we understand the issues with it. And So just to increase the permeability, so when that beach does flood, it's actually draining right through the
Yes.
parking lot now, as opposed to waiting for everything to drain off.
There are permeable paving materials.
Yeah, or even, once again, grassed-in areas with
Or-
grass types that kind of,
Yes.
they grow in
Grass
salt
pavers
areas,
where
you know.
grow grass in between the
They're
concrete.
thick thatch, but once again, things can drain through them, so just something to consider. And you can park on top of it, so you're not worrying about kind of damaging it.
Can you line it?
Our thought again was that
No, but you could actually make it, each one, you can almost kind of like do an alternate thing where you have blacktop and a grassed area where the grassed area is another park, you know, so you've got kind of an alternate kind
No,
of.
but can you stripe it so you know where the parking spaces are?
No, what I'm saying is, you'd see that it's grass and that's a parking area, so. I guess you could stripe it, but I'm just saying, you did it the size of a car, parking area.
No, but yeah, but you need to stripe it because people will take up.
Well, I think you need to strike. Well,
Okay, yeah, so,
Like you're saying, you got a T.
don't know.
Yeah.
yeah, look, I don't mean to get into design here, but I'm just saying, you know, it'd be nice to think about, you know, just kind of further perforating that
Yeah.
blacktop to the greatest extent possible.
So we have-
I was just gonna say, at Highland Farms, they're going to pave with asphalt that is permeable, which is something new to me. I
Well, the
never
issue of
heard that.
permeability here, and we're using it where we live as well, is in a sandy location, that permeable blacktop gets clogged. So it doesn't stay permeable forever. It's not for this type of an environment. It's not for an environment where you've got a lot of dust and dirt and sand and stuff. Because it'll get clogged and then you've got to go ahead and vacuum it out and clean it out, literally. So it's for certain you know, certain settings.
One of the reasons we asked early on about parking was because when we met with Jeremy, right after the last meeting with the commission, we went and met with Jeremy, and Jeremy made the point that there are no parking requirements for the town beach, which surprised me because, you know, in 30 years of doing this, there are always parking issues with every project I've ever done, so here we don't have to worry about parking. So that's one of the reasons we thought, well, maybe given that and given the fact that Pear Tree has so many more parking spaces than we, maybe we can explore ways to add some landscaping to soften the parking lot a bit. But, you know, in this case, we lose 17 spaces. If that's really, you know, going to make a big difference, then we'll.
It's clearly at a
Go in a
premium,
different
right? I
direction.
think we all understand that.
A couple of quick points. The Wheat Beach overflow area is used a lot,
Yes.
and we don't have an overflow area.
Okay.
So just keep in mind. Second thing is, the boat club decks are rather small, and they are very popular for outdoor dining. So I think outdoor dining is a winner,
I do
you
too.
know.
And I was gonna say, to your point, Mark, I was gonna say that it's a typical story when you build something and people enjoy it so much, they say, why didn't someone think to make it bigger? You know, because it is gonna be such an incredibly beautiful spot, most beautiful spot probably we're ever gonna have here. Because Wheat Beach, beautiful, but Paddle Hut's back. This really
Right.
doesn't lend any water views.
No.
And to Martha's point, it was built for, you know, our paddle hut, but we want to see it rented and used and not be empty all year long. So I think with that thought of what an opportunity we have for such a special place.
So Neil, what do you, a lot to think about here.
Yeah.
So what's our assignment?
I guess, well, I'd like Pam to get back to us with some of the answers to some of the questions I had, we had, and the key takeaway question slide. We then are going to begin schematic design and work on particular schemes that we would show you next time. I don't know, we're going to continue to
Yeah.
design to
I mean, my sense is
the mandate.
all great ideas. You know, some have
I have
some implications that, you know, maybe are a little more troubling than others, but I mean, really great, creative, in my own personal opinion here.
Yes.
And I think any of it probably could be, could translate into something that would be just really lovely. So, you know, maybe as you need more guidance to narrow things down,
Yeah.
maybe there we
I
can.
want to add one more thing too,
Go ahead.
just so, is that when you were talking about keeping the existing buildings and building around it, not to keep in mind that storage is always an issue. So perhaps in those designs too, in between the cement and the new storage, that there's some unique ways of having some storage in that area.
Can I ask, in scheme 4, at the moment, you just keep the bathroom building? Or is that going too low? Maybe scheme 4,
Approach 4, everything
Everything's
is
gone.
wiped out, brand new building.
but in
That's
approach,
one of the things that was part of the RFP requirements, that we had to explore that, so that's,
so it's approach 3 where you kept the bathroom building at grade level.
yes.
And then the lifeguard office storage, you repurpose the other concrete building for that? And then your new building is up on top of that?
Well, in this scheme, we actually demolished the existing structure that has the concession and the lifeguard and all that. We
It may
demolished
cost
that.
more money to design a structure that operates outside of that concrete building and spans than it would be to demolish it and build another storage only.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was also driven by moving the concession upstairs, because if you have $100,000 in cooking equipment, you don't want to have that susceptible to flood. so.
I just think that repurposing that other building with storage.
We could leave it and just take the concession out and repurpose it and just make it all storage.
What I do like though too is when we talked about the fact that, perhaps getting rid of the concession, but what I think is unique to the second story is that as this space gets enjoyed, it may very well have an area that you can, if it's not necessarily concession, but has the ability to have some food space, prepping space to have.
Like a warming kitchen?
Something, right.
If a caterer came in from outside. to
Right,
do an
so
event.
something to think about, that's completely
Place to
wipe it
wash
away,
dishes.
because then you're left with, didn't somebody think about how someone could have a
Sure.
gathering here?
So do you want to just go around the room with ourselves?
Yep.
For just quick comments and then we'll let the public talk?
Sure. Mark, any other thoughts here at this stage?
I just had one question, in approach number 3, where you flatten the roof of the existing building. I mean, do you think you can do that within our 50% rules? And still
Yeah.
renovate the bathrooms and?
Tearing the roof
things
off
like-
is not-
Not
It's
expensive?
not going to cost much.
Okay.
And putting something over it would literally hover over it. So I would make the argument that it's a new building.
The hovering is the.
Just hovers over
You're right,
what's there.
as long as
So
it's
just to that
touched.
point, I mean, do we have confirmation that kind of the hovering approach doesn't violate the FEMA requirement? Like it's not, they're not gonna feel as though we're kind of,
I don't have confirmation on that.
so we
But it's
probably do
something
need that earlier rather than later,
We
right?
we would go to,
Yeah.
sure. That's actually a good suggestion. Jeremy has put us in touch with the person that he's dealt with at FEMA. And, so.
Can't imagine why it would, but.
Because it's skirting the issue.
Okay, I guess I can't imagine. Lori?
I'm really pleased with what I see, Neil, the idea of the pinwheel ramps or whatever in the different stations, maybe with smaller dining areas, I think is appealing, because then individuals who maybe can't make it all the way up would have an interim spot, but they can still be up and elevated. Pam, I think what we really need to do in terms of thinking about whether we maintain a true concession space or go to the food trucks, I mean, we need to do analysis around that. We really need to be talking to our current concessionaire, see, how,
Well,
how they
interestingly
feel,
enough,
if they're
just,
doing well enough or not, or whatever, and really find a way to do an analysis about whether there's the demand for the food service there
well,
or
I
not.
agree with you, but I also think that when you build it, they will come too. So I think even with the boat ramp, you put a new one in there, we have to project that it will be busier.
No, but I'm saying, can we, it might be busier, but can we meet that same demand with the food trucks? I mean, I think that's gonna be a key
Gotcha.
delineation, as opposed to when you're saying, just have the multi-purpose room that has some basic level, a sink or fridge, like we have in the paddle hut. So if you're having a party there, at least you have the basics or something.
Right.
But I do think we need to do that, that
I agree.
analysis. Because more people may come, but that doesn't mean, but then you could look at Wheat Beach too and say, how is he doing at Wheat Beach? Does he do great? Does he do okay?
Comes back every year.
It comes back
Yeah, but-
every year,
But now you're putting a competitor on the, so he or she may
He's
not.
been at both concessions.
It's the same guy right
It's the
now.
same
But that
guy.
doesn't
But I
mean-
understand there is much more sold at Weed than there is at Pear Tree currently.
If you put a food truck and still expect your current concessionaire
Yeah, I
to
don't-
stay.
Well, you wouldn't do both.
Oh, okay,
No, you
I
wouldn't
misunderstood.
vote. I don't think you would.
So I'm just saying, we're going to do some analysis.
Currently, the analysis that he has given me is that he takes a loss at Pear Tree every year. And that he continues, I've already suggested that he close the concession this summer and we'll put food trucks there. No business should be taking a loss. But he still wants to vend.
Cheryl?
Well, I think this was very exciting tonight. I was looking forward to this. I think we've got a lot of great ideas that the committee can mull over and try and figure out which one we really think is best for the community, because this is a community beach. I would like, well, first off, I want to know, what happened to the fishing pier?
We were really dealing solely with the
Okay, so
building.
this is just the building tonight and the parking, okay. So, there was a comment came up a while back that said, what about raising the parking lot? That's not an option, or is it?
Weston and Sampson
I-
are both strong.
I don't know.
They said that that was not the
Okay, I
It's a
thought it,
non-starter.
I thought FEMA said,
somebody,
shut it down, somebody shut it down.
Well, you can raise it, you know, like, there's a limit before the state steps in, it's a 2-foot limit, you know, but I think the feedback that we then got from Dan in the interviews, which
Okay.
you weren't able to be with us,
right.
I think Dan kind of reconsidered and said, well, it was a thought, but, you know, there are maybe other ways that we
Okay,
can
so I'm glad
accomplish
that's out
the
off
issue.
the
Yeah.
table. I am happy about that, but I really would like to see the concession stand stay down. I'd like to not see a unisex bathroom, and I would like to have some dining downstairs, down on grade level. So that's where I'm coming from at this point, you know.
Mark?
Well, there's so many good ideas floating around. I actually have one I think might be a good idea to address one of your concerns, is that is, people are used to ordering food at drive-in, you know, with a microphone. And you could have a dumbwaiter from a second story food concession to deliver the burgers and fries at the beach level.
You didn't think of that, did you?
Roller skates down there.
I'm old enough to remember my grandfather taking me to the Horn and Harder in New York City.
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
Feed the cherry pies and
great. Yeah, I love those.
Well, we could have girls on roller skates. If we have the ramp going all the way around, they could just skate right on there.
Mark, any other thoughts?
You know, not right now. Once again, I will echo your comment. There's a lot of creative ideas here, and I was kind of dreading, wondering what you might be able to come up with, and this is pretty cool. You've got some great ideas to think about.
Outstanding first pass. Like Mark, I wasn't sure what I was expecting. I love the idea of the multi-tiered entryways, the four steps, 8 steps, 16 steps, the ramp going around, the little pods where different people can hang out, so not everybody's in the same group. I think that was 3 or 4 or something. I'm excited to move forward with it.
I'm excited because they're excited. But
I'm excited
in
because you're excited because they're
in addition, I think it's very important to keep at least some restrooms at grade level for all the reasons, the obvious reasons. So I think kind of working that in here is really important. I think, you know, kind of renovating and kind of leveraging the existing structures. I mean, those things are they're pretty sound to me. I mean, I'm not an engineer, but they seem pretty sound. And they've survived a lot, so if we can leverage those, that would be great. And just the other small thing is I would like, if it were possible, to integrate the gazebo into what we're doing, because I think kind of together those are just really special, and the idea of people kind of being able to flow back and forth and making the gazebo ADA accessible as well would be, I think, kind of a nice addition.
Awesome.
Yeah.
My feeling, I agree with Mike, we need to keep as we've discussed, we need to keep restrooms at grade level as long as we can get away with that. And the idea of integrating the gazebo and your kind of adventure walk on the ramp to get access up to the second floor, I think that's terrific, making it an adventure. Have the little pods off to the side for dining areas. We should have some sort of food prep facility on the second floor. It could be just a warming kitchen for a caterer to come in, or at least he's got a place to put his stuff. There should be a bathroom up on the second floor. Some storage for chairs and tables and things like that. But other than that, I think what you've done is pretty neat.
And I
We're
echo
already
all
going
that.
around the
I
room.
echo all that. Oh, all right, but I was gonna ask though, if you have the upstairs rooms, is that gonna be heat? Does that require heat year-round and air conditioning?
That was
I'd
one
like
of
to
our
see that.
questions.
I would say that.
I would say yes.
If we're gonna build it, let's use it.
I think there might have been a consideration that, I thought I heard somewhere that even from a maintenance perspective of
It's
not
better.
having the kind of such a dramatic shift in temperatures and kind of the interior climate, just kind of,
It's easier to maintain.
yeah, it just kind of increases the longevity of the structures as well, so just something you've done better than me about that.
Well, I'm going to extend too. I'm extremely surprised because I dreaded keeping those 2 cement blocks. But I think you came up with something really creative, and it excites me because I'm such a fan of being able to have the whole community be able to enjoy the space. And I think that's a winner for that top deck. And if you can actually incorporate a lower space, a lower area for decking, you know, it's just, people in Darien don't have a place to go for outdoor seating on the water. This is it. This is going to be pretty cool. And congratulations, I think it's great. I think we have a really impressive start.
So Neil, if we can invite you back on the 5th, which is our next meeting,
June 5th.
June 5th,
Okay.
which is our next meeting,
That's what I'm
you know, kind of the next round of kind of
So
refinements, that
I
would be
was
fantastic.
thinking, and I said earlier that we would start schematic design work and come with some more formulated plans next time. Do you want us to do that, or do you want to talk as a committee and you can give us feedback from this meeting at that meeting?
My sense is you've gotten our feedback.
Okay.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
I'd like to see you come back with some sort of schematic things.
Great.
And, well, I'd also, if possible, to hear from Dan the next time
Yeah,
on the environmental part of it, because as far as I'm concerned, that's really the most important
Yeah.
part of the whole project.
Okay.
So if you can extend the invitation to the
Will
Dan
do.
team as well, that'd be great. And it's really fantastic. Thank you so much.
thank you.
We want to open up to the public.
So you
Yeah,
have some
yeah.
public comment now, if you want to come up and tell us your name and
Can I say it from here? Or do you-
No, Charlie 79's gonna be able to hear you.
Where do you
so-
want me to be though?
Just.
Maybe
sit
alongside the table.
Right
where
here?
the- Yeah.
Okay. Hi, I'm Patty Baumgartner. I'm on the RT and Parks and Rec Committee. Y'all, I thought these were great ideas. The hovering, the different pod spaces, I kind of completely agree with you all on that. So just some observations. Actually, the question I was going to ask you, Lori asked, it was kind of asked and answered. I was wondering how uncles would feel about, because I think food trucks are an excellent idea. And it's where everybody is at now anyways. But I was wondering how, if an outside vendor would want to compete with that. So as you just said, no, it would only be one, and especially if they're losing business. So that makes sense. So just some quick observations with the kayak racks that the Boy Scout, the Eagle Scout built. Perhaps we just turn them from this way to that way. So it's against a fence that's already there, and then the boat club kayaks are here, so maybe we get that extra space by simply turning them this way to this way. Because when you're with my kayaks, all I'm doing is pulling them out from one side. So that might give us extra space for parking where it's not, the views aren't, obstructed. So that's just a simple answer or suggestion. I did want to give you feedback that at least twice last year, because I'm down at that beach all the time, I saw people getting tickets Tom would know, the lanes are striped near the boat club, and then they stop. And I always felt like they could have striped one more lane to get in maybe 5 more. And you still had room to bring the boats around. And so those would be 5 additional ones, but I saw on at least 2 separate occasions, and they weren't even 4th of July, because I think it rained on the 4th of July or Labor Day, that people were getting tickets. And I felt bad, because those were people who had bought their stickers, to be down there. And so I think parking is really a big consideration.
Tickets because they were not parked within striped lines?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
And I was like, this is so simple, just do 5 more stripes, and then it's solid there. So again, that's my observation. The other thing is that it seems, I love the idea of parking and being able to see the water like people do at Weed Beach, so it extends there. We have to be mindful that people do pull up a lot all the way up to the boat club, because they are dropping off their ice chests, they're dropping off their kitties, they're dropping off their kayaks and paddle boards. Many people don't leave their paddle boards down there. So if they're gonna pull up, it's really difficult already to kind of turn around if there's not a space there. So you gotta think about that. As much as I don't love all the asphalt, I do think putting in like extra green space there and taking away spots, it's gonna be problematic if people are already, that's just my feedback. Again, great designs and outdoor dining space, I'm all over it. I think it's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi there, my name is Pat Sandor, and I've been going to the beach.
Your address, Pat, please?
Excuse me?
Your address, Pat?
9 Echo Drive in Darien.
Great.
I've been going to the beaches for many, many years. Matter of fact, I was always at Weed Beach. And I really loved Weed Beach, but now I'm going over to Pear Tree, and I like some of your ideas. I think they're wonderful. We definitely do know that the bathrooms need to be completely renovated, because I will not go in there, they're that bad. But the other thing is, after all the years of going to Weed Beach, after it was renovated and we put in all the islands, and I call them weeds because they were awful. I was against that because you eliminated a lot of parking spaces. And I do not like that at all. And the islands were not very well taken care of. I had to call the Park and Recs many times for them to come and do the weeding and to take care of, so it looked more presentable. So I am totally against more islands. I do like the fact that some of the older people that do come to the beaches, they like to park right up to the sand and just, they just look at the water. And a lot of times, if with the islands there, all the spaces were taken away, and you can't do that anymore. So a lot of older people are now going to Pear Tree so they can pull right up to the water. And if you put the islands there, it's going to be a problem. But please, I said, I know the bathrooms need to be completely done over because they are unsightly. And I mean, for such an affluent town, it's embarrassing. But, please think about the islands, because I don't think it's a great idea. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Anybody else? But just, for what you said about the lines and the parking, and maybe Tom can bear me out, but I think there has to be a fire lane into where the gas tank is.
That would explain why then.
So, you've got it. I don't know if it has to be exactly where it is now, but because,
You're talking about back to the boat club?
yeah, because there is that 10,000 gallon gas tank, which is kind of right,
Right where the kayak, where we pointed.
right, almost where the ramp starts going out.
Yeah.
Just something.
Okay, anyone have anything else? Or move on
I'll
to-
add one more thing.
Sure.
Is that I know that shade is very important to a lot of people, and I think that needs to be really kept in the plan. There's numerous areas, because we do have the picnic area that's probably the only shaded area there at the beach. So
Maybe
keep that in mind.
umbrella rentals.
So,
Okay.
I mean, if you're talking picnic area, and I don't know if it's germane to this discussion, but if there's room, a small gazebo would be good, because there are occasions where people have big outings and the weather turns, and if you had some
That would have to
place
go back to the commission, because they cut out those pavilions that we had in the plan. So I think they're great. I think putting 10 picnic tables underneath a covered pavilion is just great stuff.
Oh, and maybe you can even stretch a tarp, who knows?
But that's probably up Dan's, part of Dan's whole scheme for
Yep. I mean, the picnic area is in the scope of everything, but the pavilions in particular were kind of removed, so I think it's a great point.
We could plant more trees and bring them out. Bring them out and bring the picnic area
Yeah.
out further onto the,
I
beach
think we'll let,
area.
yeah, we'll let
And
Dan
we-
kind of
Yeah, and
consider.
when we talk to Dan about
Yeah.
trees.
Yeah,
Well, and again, I'd just like to emphasize that I kind of agree, I'm hesitant. I like the idea of greenery, however, I think parking can be at a premium in the summer, but I just want to emphasize there has to be room for the boats and their trailers. I mean, the cars and their trailers. And
Yeah.
that's very important.
Tom, you mentioned that
Right.
it's a separate sticker, a launch sticker.
The rain sticker is
The launch
separate
sticker.
from
Do you know how many of those they
We do have that already.
issue?
I don't issue those Parks and Rec issues.
Yeah, I can get you that
I'm
number.
just curious.
Yeah, and I can get you multiple years.
Could be forgetted.
And there will be a
That's-
split between the people that are seasonal launchers and those
Right,
that
so if you
Right.
keep a
daily.
boat on at the dock at Darien Boat Club, do you still need to go get a launch sticker just because you're twice a year in and out? Or do you somehow get around that?
if it's in the shoulder season, you gotta have it.
Okay, so
Don't
boat
you
launch
have to have
stickers are basically people with small boats who are doing a day launch.
Nobody
Think of
checks.
that. Probably.
Kim,
Yes.
how is the launch sticker, just the person at the guard booth, if someone's pulling in with a boat on a trailer, are they also asking to see the boat launch permit?
The permit is on the vessel.
It's on the bow of the vessel so the guy can see it as you come in.
Okay, and they're charged with checking for that?
I mean, they've always checked when I've done it.
I thought it was
But you
if
can
you,
buy an alcohol.
if you had
No,
a boat, you
resident
launched
permit
your boat
also.
before the 31st of May, you didn't need a boat sticker. If it's after the 31st,
Well, the reason is because the
July.
guard isn't at the booth.
Right.
There's no guard until Memorial Day.
yeah, I
so
know,
you go in
that's
and
another
out.
discussion for another day,
Yeah.
So,
after we do this.
Okay.
One of the things I've been thinking about is the periodic flooding and maybe the possibility of raising that parking lot, whole elevation maybe a couple of feet. And we're talking about water gardens, we're talking about drains. Drains are fine until the tide is as high, higher than the drain, and then they become fountains, you know? And just one more thought about that. The parking lot floods, but so does the road. So if people aren't gonna wanna drive through salt water to get to the beach, if the road's flooded, you know.
Yep.
All right, so,
How many times a year do you think it floods?
yeah, we don't expect you to solve that problem.
More than you think.
We'll give that to the other guy.
We'll let her-
10 times a year,
No,
no,
6 times a year?
no.
depending on the storms.
Certainly high
Depends
tide,
on the
full moon.
storms, and depends on the
Just the
year.
need time.
High tide, full moon.
So
I
just
mean,
curious.
certain areas of the parking lot, I mean, you can go by the guard booth and you can snake around and go around the big pond in the parking lot.
How deep does it get?
Not very,
And it goes away pretty quickly, too.
yes.
The trains go
I mean, it's not feet, it's inches, like 2 or 3 inches.
Yeah.
And again, because of the pitch of the current parking lot,
So if we raise the grade of the parking lot, is that going to exacerbate flooding on the neighbor's property?
That's
I think that's what you guys have to look into.
I
That's
seem to
something
recall
to-
that was pretty much shot down.
I recall it shut down.
raising the parking lot.
Water seeks its own.
I thought it was a deep issue in one of our last meetings
I
that
thought
was
so too, I
discussed.
thought it was.
They said non-starter.
Non-starter, but it wasn't
Yeah.
gonna, it wasn't gonna be a solution
Right.
to the coastal
Okay,
restoration.
so that's something we can kind of get some clarity with. So, any new business from the committee? Anybody want to bring anything else to the table? Otherwise, can
Do you
I?
have any idea about,
Thank you.
doing the parking lot,
Thank you for your
moving
comments.
the entranceway at all?
We can't, we got this beautiful new guard booth already
Well, I know,
in
but
place.
it's movable.
What was the
The
question?
foundation's in.
Where the entrance and, where the entrance should be, if we're gonna moving it at all? Because it looks like it's still in the same spot.
Yeah,
Okay.
we kept it there
Okay.
in this first go-around. You know, it does provide central access to both beach and boathouse. And it looks like it allows for boat trailers to come in and back up adequately, so.
You know, otherwise, if you put it down in the other corner where they talked about, you'd have the trailers coming all the way through the
All the way
entire length of the
back.
parking
Right.
lot.
Yeah.
Right.
And the foundation was pretty darn expensive.
I know,
so-
I can install that down
And
there.
I think you knew what Pam went through to get that thing in there.
Yeah.
It looks lovely, right where it is.
Anybody want to move
Oh,
to
that's
adjourn?
Okay, can I invite a motion
I make a
to
motion
adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Are we second?
Okay.
All those in favor?
Who seconded?
Cheryl, seconded. All those in favor? Great.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Great job, Jen.